They ate soggy K-ration cans in foxholes and bland stews on the home front. Then those wartime meals vanished into modern kitchens. Let's rediscover 25 real WWII recipes that fed sacrifice, resilience, and hope. In wartime kitchens across Europe and on the American home front, every scrap counted. Cabbage and sausage stew became a defining dish of the era, using whatever was available. Loose carrots, onions, a few slices of sausage, and shredded cabbage simmered together in a thin, flavorful broth. The sausage provided rare fat and savory depth, while the vegetables stretched the meal to feed hungry mouths. It mattered deeply because meat was heavily rationed and cabbage was cheap, filling, and easy to grow in backyard victory gardens. Even in soldier camps, similar stews were cooked over open flames using mess hall scraps. This dish wasn't glamorous, but it was dependable, a taste of comfort when everything else was uncertain. As processed foods and richer meals became the norm post-war, simple stews like this slowly disappeared. But it still has something to teach us about thrift, resilience, and making the most of little. Try it today and taste what perseverance once meant in every humble spoonful. When fresh meat was near impossible to find during World War II, soldiers and families alike turned to shelf-stable canned goods. Spam and split peas quickly became pantry essentials. To make pea hash, home cooks or mess sergeants simmered dried peas until soft, then fried chunks of spam until browned and crispy. The two were stirred together into a salty, protein-rich mash, gritty, heavy, and deeply filling. It mattered because dried peas were cheap and widely distributed through ration programs, while spam could survive any climate without spoiling. Soldiers nicknamed it fuel on a fry pan because it kept them going in the field. Families at home embraced it too, stretching their supplies without sacrificing warmth at the table. As time passed and instant meals took over kitchens, the dish quietly disappeared. But spam and pea hash stands as a symbol of resilience and ingenuity under pressure. Try cooking it just once. It's a taste of wartime endurance, repackaged for today's budget-conscious, nostalgia-loving kitchen. Victory gardens produced an abundance of produce: tomato, carrot, pea, potato, yet families couldn't waste a scrap. Vegetable soup combined must-use bits with meat bones, or even just salt. It stewed slowly on a wood-burning stove, each spoonful tangy with fresh-picked herbs. It mattered because these gardens symbolized national effort. Every vegetable eaten was one fewer ration card used. Soldiers in field kitchens made a similar broth with dandelion leaves or dried veg. Over time, fresh vegetable stews lost popularity as canned soups took over. But vegetable soup speaks of community resilience and farm-to-table roots long before modern labels. Rediscover it for its simple, seasonal nourishment and the spirit of shared sacrifice that grew in America's backyards. But next up is a dessert that tasted like home when sugar was scarce, a treat soldiers craved and families prized in dim wartime kitchens. Named after Lord Woolton, Britain's wartime Minister of Food, Woolton pie was a meatless vegetable pie served across the UK. It used a medley of potatoes, carrots, parsnips, and onions, thickened with a white sauce or oatmeal, topped with whole wheat pastry or mashed potato crust. Designed to stretch rations and promote nutrition, this pie mattered because it proved hearty meals didn't require meat. It symbolized unity and resilience. Households across class lines embraced this humble, meat-free dinner. The Ministry of Food distributed recipes and urged cooks to adapt based on whatever was available. It was nutritious, affordable, and made from garden-grown ingredients. But after the war, when meat became more available, Woolton pie lost favor. Most remembered it as bland or boring. Still, it holds lessons in adaptation and communal effort. Recreating it today reminds us that hardship can birth creativity. Add cheese or herbs and taste how this utilitarian dish helped feed a nation under siege. Known to soldiers as SOS, a not-so-polite acronym, creamed chipped beef on toast was a military breakfast standby. It featured dried beef slices rehydrated and cooked in a creamy white sauce, then poured over toasted bread. The sauce stretched the tiny amount of meat to fill hungry stomachs. It mattered because it offered warmth and protein, even when meat was scarce. Easy to mass-produce and made with preserved beef and powdered milk, it became a staple in barracks across the U.S. Though mocked by soldiers for its blandness and monotony, it filled bellies and fueled countless troops. After the war, it found its way into American diners and home kitchens, especially during lean years. But with fresher breakfast options available today, it faded into nostalgia. Recreate it with real milk, butter, and beef, and it might just surprise you with its comfort. Did your parents or grandparents ever serve this? Let us know what wartime dishes still show up on your family table. When meat was scarce and nothing could go to waste, potato pancakes with gravy became a dinnertime solution. Made from grated potatoes, a bit of onion, flour, and an egg if available, the pancakes were fried in fat saved from meat or bacon. Leftover gravy or broth was poured over the top for flavor. It mattered because it turned humble ingredients into something hearty. Families could stretch a few potatoes into a meal that fed many. For soldiers, similar potato-based patties were common in mess kits, especially in colder climates where potatoes stored well. Over time, the dish was replaced by boxed potato products and faster meals. But this version celebrates thrift and transformation. Grate, fry, and top with whatever savory sauce you've got. It's a taste of wartime wisdom on a plate. Coming up next, a ration-friendly dessert that made wartime families forget just how little sugar they had. During World War II, traditional baking ingredients were strictly rationed. Enter the war cake, also known as depression cake or boiled raisin cake. This dessert skipped eggs, milk, and butter, relying instead on boiled raisins, sugar, and spices to provide moisture and flavor. The batter was stirred with flour and baking soda, then baked into a dense, rich loaf. It mattered because it allowed families to enjoy something sweet despite severe shortages. Housewives became experts at making dough, and this recipe became a cherished staple. Some even added leftover coffee or applesauce to enhance the taste. Though it vanished as full-fat cakes returned post-war, the war cake stands as a triumph of creativity under constraint. Today, it can be a meaningful bake, vegan-friendly, nostalgic, and surprisingly satisfying. Make one, and you'll understand how something so simple became such a morale booster during the darkest times. A slice of sweetness, shared when everything else was being given up. Liver was one of the few meats widely available during the war, less desirable than steaks or chops, but rich in iron, protein, and resilience. Families stretched it by grinding or finely chopping liver, then blending it with oats, onions, herbs, and sometimes a bit of egg or milk. Formed into a loaf and baked in a tin, it was sliced hot and served with gravy, ketchup, or even mustard. This recipe mattered because it maximized nutrition while honoring the wartime principle: use every part, waste nothing. Oatmeal served as both binder and filler, turning a modest portion into a full family dinner. Similar loaves were served to soldiers in mess halls, and even children grew to accept the flavor out of necessity. But when more palatable meats returned post-war, liver loaf quietly disappeared from dinner tables. Today, it's rarely seen, but it remains a testament to resourcefulness and thrift. Try it once, and you may find old wisdom in every bite. When sugar was hard to come by, carrots became a surprising dessert star. Carrot cookies were soft, lightly spiced, and naturally sweetened with grated carrots and dried fruit. The batter often used minimal sugar or honey and just enough flour to hold together. These cookies mattered because they provided a sweet treat using wartime garden staples. Kids helped grate carrots, and families could enjoy dessert without needing their precious ration stamps. The idea came from government cookbooks, encouraging healthier, sugar-stretching solutions. Over time, carrot cookies were replaced by richer, post-war sweets, but the concept never fully disappeared. Echoes live on in modern carrot cake. Today, they're a great way to reduce sugar and embrace natural sweetness. Bake a batch and share them. You'll understand how a war-weary world made room for joy. But not every wartime meal came from a kitchen. Some were born in foxholes, sealed in tins, and eaten cold beside the roar of battle. Packed into cardboard boxes and carried into war zones, K-rations were the daily meals of American soldiers. The breakfast unit often included canned pork loaf, powdered coffee, biscuits, a fruit bar, and 4 cigarettes. Everything was compact, calorie-dense, and shelf-stable for months. It mattered because soldiers needed fuel on the move, and K-rations provided exactly that. Designed by food scientists, these meals kept troops alive through Europe's cold winters and the Pacific's sweltering jungles. But they were far from delicious. The meat was salty and rubbery, the biscuits dry, the coffee gritty, but they offered a reminder of home in tiny, predictable boxes. Over time, K rations gave way to MREs, and these small wartime breakfasts became historical curiosities. Yet their legacy endures in today's emergency and camping food. Try recreating one, just once, and you'll taste the sacrifice behind every bite. Ever seen an actual K ration or tried military rations? Tell us your story. We want to hear how wartime meals have crossed generations. Wartime cooks, both in field kitchens and modest homes, turned to pantry staples like bulgur wheat and lentils when fresh meat and vegetables were hard to come by. Bulgur pilaf was built from the basics: onions sautéed in oil or rendered fat, lentils simmered until just tender, and bulgur added with broth or salted water. The dish was seasoned simply with salt, pepper, and if luck allowed, a handful of parsley or foraged greens. This meal mattered because it was inexpensive, easy to prepare in bulk, and packed with protein, fiber, and warmth. It helped sustain soldiers on the march and families facing rationing. Lentils stored well, and bulgur cooked faster than rice, saving precious fuel. After the war, convenience foods like instant rice and pre-made mixes pushed this rustic classic aside. But bulgur pilaf is worth reviving. It's naturally vegetarian, budget-friendly, and deeply nourishing. Add a dollop of yogurt or diced tomato, and you'll discover how simple ingredients once fed determination and hope. With eggs heavily rationed during World War II, families had to get creative to keep breakfast traditions alive. Enter eggless pancakes, a wartime workaround that relied on flour, baking powder, water, a pinch of salt, and a little fat. The batter yielded thin, chewy pancakes that browned beautifully on cast-iron skillets. They could be topped with ration-friendly options like jam, molasses, or grated apples. This mattered because pancakes were a comfort food, especially on weekends, and maintaining rituals helped boost morale in uncertain times. Eggless versions allowed families to preserve their limited egg supply without giving up the warmth of a familiar meal. Soldiers in shelters and training camps also made versions using flour and powdered milk when fresh eggs were unavailable. These pancakes brought moments of joy, even under constraint. As post-war abundance returned and boxed mixes dominated shelves, the recipe slipped into obscurity. But with modern interest in plant-based and frugal cooking, eggless pancakes are worth flipping once again. Next, we'll uncover a protein-packed ration staple served in field tins. Reliable, salty, and strangely cherished by those at the front. Served in heavy tins and carried into combat zones, C rations were the backbone of U.S. military nutrition during World War II. While they weren't exactly gourmet, soldiers quickly learned to improvise. One popular battlefield adaptation was tomato hash, a dish made by breaking up the tinned meat, beef, chicken, or pork loaf, and combining it with diced canned tomatoes and whatever spices could be scrounged from ration kits or traded among troops. Cooked in a mess kitchen skillet or over a foxhole flame, the hash sizzled until hot, slightly crispy, and full of comforting salty flavor. It mattered because it gave soldiers some control over their meals and brought a hint of creativity to repetitive rations. Back home, thrifty families recreated similar meals using Spam and homegrown tomatoes. After the war, as MREs and frozen dinners took over, this dish faded away. But tomato hash lives on in camping recipes and food history, an improvised, satisfying reminder of how food fuels more than just the body. During World War II, sugar was tightly rationed, but molasses, a thick byproduct of sugar refining, remained more readily available. Molasses pancakes quickly became a breakfast staple for families trying to stretch flavor on a budget. Made from flour, water or skim milk, baking soda, salt, and a hearty pour of molasses, the batter created dark, chewy pancakes with deep caramel notes and crisp edges when fried in bacon grease or margarine. These weren't just substitutions, they became beloved treats, especially on weekend mornings. It mattered because molasses offered both sweetness and calories without burning through precious sugar rations. Children grew to love the bold, earthy flavor, and soldiers even asked for molasses breads and cakes in mess halls when supplies allowed. After the war, fluffy, syrup-drenched pancakes took over again, and molasses recipes disappeared from family cookbooks. But reviving this dish today offers something richer than nostalgia. It's a taste of endurance. Try a batch and taste history's answer to scarcity and comfort. In a world of war, even dessert had to be reinvented. cornstarch pudding emerged as one of the simplest luxuries. Made from ingredients nearly every household had on hand, families stirred cornstarch into hot water or evaporated milk, added a spoonful of sugar or syrup, and simmered it until the mixture thickened into a smooth, custard-like treat. Some added dried fruit, cocoa powder, or a dash of vanilla if available. It mattered because even a modest dessert brought joy after a dinner of boiled cabbage or bread crusts. It was affordable, adaptable, and comforting, perfect for families rationing every egg and ounce of butter. Field hospitals and military kitchens even served it to recovering soldiers who needed gentle nourishment. As richer desserts returned post-war, cornstarch pudding faded into memory, but it remains gluten-free, budget-friendly, and deeply nostalgic. Dust it with cinnamon, swirl in a spoon of jam, and discover why this modest dish once sweetened even the hardest days. Did your family ever cook meals like these during hard times? Or still keep a WWII kitchen recipe alive? Share your stories in the comments. In wartime kitchens and military camps, fresh meat was scarce, but Spam became a reliable savior. Soldiers and families alike turned to the pink gelatinous slab and found a way to make it crave-worthy. Slice it, fry it until crisp, and slap it between two slices of bread. Often topped with mustard, pickles, or ketchup, the fried Spam sandwich turned bland rations into something hot, salty, and deeply satisfying. This mattered because it restored some sense of normalcy and control. Soldiers carried Spam in their ration kits across the Pacific and Europe, frying it over open flames or camp stoves. Back home, children rushed home from school to find one waiting on the table. When post-war prosperity brought back fresh meats and deli counters, Spam faded into a kitschy memory. But for many, it still carries nostalgic charm. Fry up a slice today, serve it with a soft roll or toasted white bread, and rediscover the crispy comfort that powered wartime resilience. When eggs were scarce and ration cards strictly monitored, lentil pancakes became an inventive solution on both the home front and in makeshift army kitchens. Housewives soaked dried lentils, ground them into a coarse batter with water, a little flour, and salt, and pan-fried the mixture into thin, crisp-edged pancakes. Topped with herbs, onions, or a drizzle of oil if available, they were savory, satisfying, and packed with protein. This dish mattered because it paired affordable, non-perishable legumes with ration-friendly staples, making it both nourishing and accessible. Soldiers stationed abroad even taught civilians to make similar versions using local ingredients. After the war, as fresh eggs and refined flour became plentiful again, lentil pancakes were replaced by richer fare and quietly disappeared from many tables. Yet in recent years, they've re-emerged in vegetarian, vegan, and gluten-conscious cooking. Try them today with yogurt, chutney, or even jam. You'll taste the quiet brilliance of wartime adaptation. Simple, strong, and still relevant. In wartime Britain, every morsel mattered, especially the savory drippings left behind after roasting meat. Nothing went to waste. Bread and dripping dumplings emerged from that ethos, combining stale bread, rendered fat, a little flour, and salt into dense, flavorful dumplings. These were rolled into balls and simmered in broth or gravy until spongy and rich. They mattered because they transformed scraps into something warm, filling, and deeply satisfying during times of extreme rationing. A little leftover roast provided the flavor. The rest was pure ingenuity. Families across class lines embraced this thrifty dish, and even soldiers recognized it in military mess halls. Children were taught to mop up every drop from the roasting pan. It was a cultural practice of gratitude. When the war ended and fresh meats and butter returned, dumplings evolved into fluffier versions, and this bread and dripping kind slowly disappeared. But recreating them offers a taste of resilience, meatless, humble, yet full of heart. Coming up next, a sweet wartime sip little known today, but once a morale booster on cold nights. Even warm drinks during World War II had to adapt. With tea and coffee in short supply, families turned to something different, hot ribena. Made by diluting concentrated blackcurrant syrup, often grown in backyard victory gardens, into hot water. It was sweetened with honey, or a sugar substitute when available. This mattered because it provided warmth, comfort, and a crucial dose of vitamin C when citrus was unavailable. It wasn't just a substitute drink, it became a staple in cold kitchens and chilly shelters. Hospitals and Red Cross stations even served similar berry drinks to wounded soldiers recovering from illness or injury. The flavor was tart, fruity, and soothing. Once global imports resumed and modern teas and coffees returned post-war, hot Ribena faded into nostalgic memory. Yet its purpose was real and important. Try a mug on a cold day. It's simple, fast, and surprisingly comforting. In every sip, you'll taste a resourceful, hopeful chapter of Homefront life. In the ration-squeezed kitchens of World War II, rice pudding was more than dessert. It was comfort. Families across Britain and beyond stretched precious supplies into foster mom's rice pudding, a thick, creamy dish made by simmering rationed rice with water or powdered milk, a touch of sugar, and a sprinkle of cinnamon or nutmeg if available. It was often baked slowly in the oven until it formed a soft skin on top, then served warm or cold. This dish mattered because it transformed minimal ingredients into a soothing luxury. In foster homes and communal kitchens, it was a way to bring warmth and stability to children displaced by bombings or evacuation. Soldiers and patients in military hospitals received similar puddings made with condensed milk and bulk rice. When the war ended and full-fat dairy returned, richer desserts like custards and creams pushed rice pudding aside, but it still stands as a timeless comfort, soft, sweet, and full of quiet endurance. Did your family ever make rice pudding or berry drinks during hard times? Tell us which ration era comfort you fondly remember. We'd love to hear your stories. During World War II, heftier meats were rationed heavily, but root vegetables remained abundant, and homes and camps turned them into nourishing stews. Potatoes, carrots, parsnips, and turnips were cubed and simmered in diluted broth with onions, a dash of salt, and sometimes a splash of vinegar. This simple stew was cooked over stoves or open fires, often thickened slightly with flour or barley. It mattered because it provided warmth, calories, and comfort using easily grown, storable produce. Soldiers in field trenches ate similar mixes when fresh supplies ran out. Children remembered the hearty aroma in home kitchens during winter evenings. When meat became available again post-war, sauce and gravy-based stews replaced these humble versions, and root stew faded. But come cold weather, rediscovering this dish fills both belly and memory. Up next, we'll explore a wholesome loaf made from overlooked barley, beloved by frugal families and rugged soldiers alike. Pruk cooks quickly learned to stretch every grain, and barley became a go-to substitute for bread and meat. To create a filling and nutritious loaf, boiled barley was mixed with finely chopped vegetables, usually cabbage, onions, carrots, or whatever was on hand, along with breadcrumbs and a binding agent like mashed potatoes or a powdered egg substitute. The loaf was shaped by hand or packed into tins, then baked until golden and firm. This mattered because it was hearty, affordable, and didn't require much meat or flour, precious commodities during the war. Factory workers, large families, and soldiers all benefited from its sustaining power. Barley offered slow-digesting carbs, fiber, and a mild flavor that welcomed spice or herbs. Once flour, yeast, and commercial bread returned post-war, these rustic loaves lost popularity. But in today's kitchens, where cost, health, and sustainability are top priorities, it's a smart, satisfying revival. Slice it warm, top with cheese, or serve beside soup. It's simple food with a strong backstory. When flour was rationed and white bread became a distant memory, wartime families turned to a heartier solution: ration brown bread. Made with wholemeal flour, water, a bit of molasses or sugar, and often enriched with wheat bran or crushed oats, this bread used no yeast. Instead, it was leavened with baking soda or simply left unleavened, producing a dense, cake-like texture. Baked in loaf tins, it emerged coarse, chewy, and slightly sweet. It mattered because it sustained laborers, soldiers, and school children with its fiber-rich, slow-burning calories. Communities often baked these loaves together in communal ovens, especially in cities where fuel and oven space were limited. After the war, white bread reclaimed its dominance, and this dense brown loaf became rare outside artisan bakeries. But for wartime families, it was daily strength in edible form. Bake a loaf today, toast it thick, and spread with butter or jam. You'll taste what resilience once rose without yeast or complaint. When traditional tea leaves became nearly impossible to find, wartime families across Britain and beyond got creative. Dandelion tea became a surprisingly popular substitute. Children were sent out to collect young dandelion leaves and flowers from gardens, parks, and roadside patches. These were then dried and steeped into a caffeine-free herbal infusion. The tea had a slightly bitter, earthy flavor, far from Earl Grey, but still comforting. It mattered because it preserved the cherished ritual of afternoon tea, provided hydration, and relied on a plant that grew freely and abundantly. Soldiers overseas often encountered similar herbal brews made by local civilians, creating cross-cultural moments of warmth. After the war, imported teas flooded back in, and dandelion tea quietly returned to rural kitchens and foraging circles. Today, it's a symbol of self-reliance and sustainability. Dry the petals, steep them slowly, and sip with care. You'll be drinking a reminder that even weeds can carry history, healing, and home. During the summer harvest, when victory gardens overflowed and wild hedgerows brimmed with ripe fruit, families turned nature's bounty into something lasting: homemade jam. Using plums, blackberries, raspberries, or whatever fruit was available, they cooked it down slowly with modest amounts of rationed sugar to create thick, flavorful preserves. This mattered because jam didn't just sweeten bread, it lifted spirits. A spoonful on rationed brown bread brought brightness to otherwise bland meals. It also prevented valuable fruit from spoiling, offering taste and nutrition through winter. Children helped gather berries, and mothers passed down jam-making techniques with pride. Soldiers occasionally received jam tins in rations, sparking emotional connections to home. After the war, commercial jellies and mass-produced spreads became cheap and convenient, pushing homemade versions aside. But wartime jam had character, bold, uneven, and deeply personal. Try making a small batch today. In every jar, you preserve more than fruit. You capture resilience, gratitude, and the taste of doing more with less. I hope this journey through WWII recipes brought comfort and connection to your table. These forgotten dishes remind us of resilience, creativity, and shared meals. Let's savor history together. Until next time.